Welcome to Narratives Leadership Story Talks, where great leaders go beyond the bottom line to create lasting impact. Join hosts Jerome Deroy and Julienne Ryan as they uncover the stories behind real-world challenges, offering practical insights to help you lead with empathy, authenticity, and purpose. Each episode dives into how leaders use storytelling to build trust, foster connection, and inspire action. Whether you're navigating workplace dynamics, driving change, or building high-performing teams.
To be resilient, what I've learned over time is that you have to tell the hard stories, the stories of failure, the stories of not enough. And we often start those stories, sessions with I am poems. And I think we had folks do them that day. And I remember, thinking, when people ask you who you are, and you start to tell them, if you can tell them in that sort of poetic fashion, it resonates. And then it makes it easier for you to talk about the challenges you have. And I remember talking about I'm vulnerable and powerful. I am Nubian Pearl, the love child of Joseph and Sarah. I'm a Northeastern gem with some Southern ways.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm a middle child, only girl child, nurtured under the watchful eyes of brothers dear, my Farmdale Road family, and my church home. I'm from family dinners that turned into rook parties and lively debates on Saturday night.
All right. Well, that was Pearl Alexander, who just finished a long tenure at Georgia Tech. And I really loved what she had to say throughout the entire interview. It was hard to just choose one excerpt, but I think especially the I Am poem was very inspiring and moving, I think, to both of us. And kind of a new take on how to introduce oneself, beyond the title, the role, and your kind of professional background. This really gets to the heart of the person. And it's also told in her voice. Nobody else is telling that for her. Nobody's saying, oh, Pearl is this way or that way. She gets to identify who she is for others and then express that. So yeah, I thought that was very powerful. Any thoughts, Jules?
Of course, I have thoughts. I always liken conversations to music. There's pauses, there's codas, there's a new way to bring a new part of the music into the conversation. And first, I loved what Pearl explained because she disrupted the listening of the group that she was addressing to, giving them permission to be a little more creative, and then told a lot of little things about her through her poem. And poem, as you know, is rhythm and music in words. So I thought it was artful. And then I used a similar philosophy when I did a workshop last week to groups where I'm standing there talking about the facilitator and I'm now the housekeeping of the day. And I was introduced of how I knew my sponsor person for the event. But then I riffed a little bit and gave a little bit more about my bio in a couple of seconds, or what informs my work, without having to go into a whole narrative formal document that would put everyone to sleep. So yeah, I think it is a great thing and made me think about other things, as we're going back into offices and you're looking to engage with your staff at meetings and not just doing the usual things, or even in your office, if you are blessed with a whiteboard in your office. I know one of the things I did that was a little non-traditional when I was working in HR, to get people to lure them to come to my office and talk, or at least read the board so I could chat with them. I would doodle. I mean, I would have things that inspired me out of conversations. Maybe it was the weather, maybe it was a quote I had read. Then I would put some sweets so people would grab something. But it was a way of kind of doing the hello, hi, kitty, come here.
Mm.
I want to have a little bit of a chat, or at least acknowledge your existence. So looking for things that disrupt people, how they understand how you are. They knew me for employee relations, they knew me from recruiting and a whole bunch of other dry things. But if you can interrupt their thought process and just break the ice
Yeah.
sometimes and be the first one to start it. So that's what I love about her. She shows the power of the beat. Not everything gets shared in logical linear order. And I say that in interviews when I'm coaching candidates. You got to figure out when you're going to weave the little metaphor or analogy about you and bide your time and listen for the cues. It's not going to be exact science, but you have to listen to your gut and watch the body, body language, etc. So yeah, I've been thinking.
Yeah. I love that. And what there's two things that this makes me think about. One is the kind of goes back to our episode about assumptions
Mm-hmm.
and exactly what you're talking about because of your role as a facilitator and who you are, your background. People probably got your bio in advance or somebody introduced you,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's who you are to them. And that's because we're assuming that that's it, right? Everything, who you are is contained in that 3 paragraph bio. And yeah, I love what you said about how do we disrupt that. I think that's a great lesson for everybody else, that's listening.
Assumptions. Looking, and
Yes.
you go off screen, short, blonde, older person, and you're like, what does she have to offer? And I remember one professor way back when in graduate school, way, way back, who said like the conversation that you're talking to a bubble over the person's head when they're looking at you, walk into a room and saying, who are you? Why are you here? And how are you going to help me? And what are you going to say to show that you get me? Because sometimes it's this, arms crossed in front and like, okay, show me what you got. So I think
Mm,
conversations and dialogues, there's a little bit of a dance, and our metaphors or mini stories or references to things that are personal could, can, and could disrupt the person's listening and build some trust.
yeah, yeah. The second thing that this reminded me of was just the power of that personal story that you tell. And for Pearl, it was that I am poem. You've given
Uh-huh.
us now some examples of what you do to disrupt that. And what everyone is doing with these techniques and methods is you're creating a space. You're creating a
Mhm.
space that says to everybody else, this is safe. You're in good hands. I'm open. Therefore, you can be whoever you want to be in this space, because I'm getting out of the box of my bio and I'm showing that to you. And as a result, it sets a tone. It sets a tone. It creates a space. It tells people that, yeah, you can try things out in this space. And that's often what we do at Narrative as well is why we use stories is to make ourselves more relatable, more human, and it tells people in the room that's where we are now. It's not sort of business as usual.
And just to close on that, I brought to life a story when I was going out to communities in New York of, that I did not look like the audience I was going to address. I would say that and saying, you may be wondering why, or, looking at me, what do I have to offer? And then I would kind of go into what we are going to offer in a conversation with my colleagues that day and addressed. But always started, well, here's what I know we have in common without even
Mm,
going forward. And I would launch into, being first generation and a couple other things. And it was a risk, but sometimes you could see from the body language, like, oh, she went there and said it. Because if you hide it and you just sound robotic and you go right to the PowerPoint or the formal presentation, you've lost people already. They've heard it all before. Somebody else has come before you with a
mm,
similar maybe spiel, or they've been, hasn't landed. So, go into something that's a bit more human and acknowledging that you're vulnerable or nervous, or you need to, you have something to say, but you're hoping they're going to listen to you. And I
mm.
think it helps quite a bit. It's a bit risky. You would never know until you get there. I'm not saying you just kind of walk in and say, oh, I'm all calm. No.
Right.
Till you're in the rhythm, in the role, and you can read the room. But I think taking that leap of faith as well, and Jerome, you've done, and that's where we offer value, is to play with it and also test it. How do you think this will land? And have a committee of people that are different ways
Mm.
of listening and reacting to see how it's going to land. So eclectic, go with very positive people, go with some cranky people in your world that will criticize some things or tell you what it may come across at. So you can go in and inform. But then get comfortable with taking some risks and practicing and showing up. And you're right, when you're telling your own story and your truth, people are going to get that. They know that you're
Mm.
not just reading from, a handbook. They'll respect that about you.
Yeah. And now we've given you, listener, a few
Mhm.
tips and strategies, things that you can try out, so you can try out the I am poem for yourself, see how that lands just for you. And then, as Jules just said, for other people, try it with other people you trust, and see what the feedback is. Try out those, stories about yourself, those little anecdotes, etc., things that just get you a little bit out of that box of the bio, the introduction, brings your another part of yourself that isn't on the resume or that introduction or that website, and see how that works for you. For this and many, many other resources, you can certainly go to narrative.com, NARATIV.com. And really, if you've been inspired by our conversation with Pearl Alexander and this particular debrief, we encourage you to go ahead and look at our website and see, where you might want to enroll, what kind of training program. We do this in groups, we do this one-on-one. And every time with that focus on you, the individual, what makes you you, and what's the story that's going to represent that. Very, very valuable skill to have. So again, narrative.com, and please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts for this Leadership Story Talks, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narrative.com.